Now, for those who remember radio and television in Lagos and across Nigeria in the late 1970s and early 1980s, there was one voice that dominated the airwaves, bringing colour and excitement to pop music fans on the radio and keeping the nation informed with news and continuity announcements on television. And that voice belonged to Patrick OK, a first-rate broadcaster who presented shows on FRCN and FRC2 radio and the NTA television network, a long-running association that made him instantly recognizable everywhere in Nigeria, particularly for the so-called pop pickers, the teens and the 20s of the era. Pop Round the World, presented by Patrick OK, was a must on the only FM radio station in Lagos at the time, FRC2. Sadly, we don't have a clip of Pop Round the World, and no one seems to have it. But we do have a snippet of what FRC2 sounded like in the 70s and early 80s. Take a listen.
Of primary education to the state government has not been put in place. And that's the new summary for half the state. Nigerians, let's make our country great with what we have.
As part of Unleash the 80s TV documentaries, CBM revisits 45 Martin Street, Lagos, the historical building that once housed the nation's first FM stereo, Radio Nigeria 2 AM FM stereo. He talks with
people who are recorded directly for RN2, JJ, Fred Oshodi, Bode Sinti, Tunde Balogun. All of those people, we started on the 15th of January 1979.
Well, that's just a little snippet of what things sounded like in those days. Well, for more on those days of yore, I'm delighted to say that the rousingly talented veteran broadcaster Patrick OK joins me now from our studios in Lagos. Patrick, an absolute delight to have you. And I first of all need to apologize from the bottom of my heart for the delay. Because obviously we had problems with the communications, the governor's people, and the governor turned up a bit late. But here you are, and I'm delighted to see you, my friend. Take us back to those days in the 1970s and just give us briefly a sense of how you got into broadcasting.
Charles, I thought you had forgotten about all these things. Why do you don't let us forget Pop Around the World and that era where, we're just having fun, and this thing about being with it, what is happening in the world, was so paramount in our minds. We just did things. We never thought twice about it. But you want to know how I got into broadcasting. But Charles, first of all, let me say you have astounded me. You have astounded me. You have done so much in broadcasting. You should be named the ambassador of broadcasting for Nigeria, outside Nigeria. You have done so much. And you say that I gave you the impetus. So you are my protege. Is that what they say? You are my product. That I should be walking back, really feeling good with myself, that one of mine has reached the heights of broadcasting. Thank you very much, Charles. I'm very proud of you.
Well,
now you want to know how I did broadcasting, but you know.
I am more proud of you, Patrick, because I have to say, at the risk of people thinking that you and I are starting a mutual admiration club, I mean, I can tell you that you were one of my greatest inspirations. I remember an interview I did with This Day newspaper a few years ago. I mentioned you. On the Nigerian scene, beyond the international people, I mentioned you and I mentioned Ikenna Ndaguba, two people who were absolutely, tremendous inspirations. But this is not about me, it's about you, Patrick. Those were, you talk about it nostalgically. That was really been a memorable time for you, though. You were hugely popular.
Yes, it was. Yeah, well, the thing is, it was even now, it's sometimes embarrassing when I go out with my wife and family and people come up to you and say, hello, I used to know you. Are you not so 40 or 30 years later? So it can be sometimes embarrassing because you've lived out of that. You're not used to being stopped on the streets anymore, because in those days, fan clubbing was even worse than now. You couldn't stand in a bus stop. And we're not rich, Charles. We got 10 naira a week for presenting Pop Around the World. So we were not rich. I mean, we took buses like everybody else, and you were shocked when people come to you and say, "Are you not so? I know you're on TV. Oh, you're taking bus like us?" And we say, "Yes." That is how it was. So, I mean, it was just fun for us. It was a profession, but you could not hold it and say this was the lucrative profession or the profession that you can say is going to take you to where you want to go in life. It was just like, I love doing this and people like it, so let me stick there for the time being. There's a lot of nostalgia in this. I know a lot of people now all over the place. The other day I was in Mozambique having a drink when Burma Boy or somebody walked in, and everybody, the ladies around me, just sort of froze. And, they were all sitting in different desks, but they just froze when he walked in, and everybody wanted a photograph with him. And I just flashed back in my mind, and I said, this used to happen to us, but stardom now is so much. But let's not forget that it didn't start that way. You and I know, Charles, that it didn't quite start that way. There were those who paid the supreme price, as it were, who just did the job not because of what was there, but because they were just interested and they thought they had something to offer. And then people were very appreciative. So it kept us going.
Well, to be fair,
Hello?
Patrick, I think you're being quite humble. Can you? I hope you can hear me. You're not having problems with your comms there. Your earpiece, Christ, today doesn't appear to be the most brilliant. Can you hear me at all, Patrick? You've got to put your earpieces back on. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me, Patrick? Right, okay. Well, can we hear what Patrick is saying? Sorry? Okay, well, I can hear you now.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Patrick. What I was going to say...
Yes.
What I was going to say is that you're being incredibly modest about the things that you achieved.
Really?
Because I remember hanging out with you. I mean, obviously I was just coming, I was still in diapers at the time, but I remember, I mean, you had a car. I remember you had a blue Chrysler. And I remember going around with you. Everybody recognized you as one of the greats of radio and television, and people were starstruck when they met you. I mean, that's just the honest truth.
Yeah, that was a lot of fame without the money to go with it. That Chrysler, it was good. It was one of the newest cars in the time, but we had to do it on hire purchase. And we're both paying back 300 naira every month. And given the salary you were getting, that was a lot. So after a while, you couldn't just maintain it. But it was fun. I mean, you went everywhere and people, in fact, sometimes you go to a party and you meet someone and the person would say, "I trust you, you can go home with my car." And I said, "But you don't know me." And she said, "No, don't worry, you can't run away with my car." So it was that kind of time. It was great fun, but as you know, many of us didn't follow it through like you did, Charles, because it was not just sustaining enough for you to say, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But Charles, you took it to the next level. Now forget what you say. You took it to the next level. You've been with the BBC, you were being with, I think you were with CNN at one time, you were a BBC correspondent to Nigeria, and Charles, you were reading BBC News. Well, that was just it.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Patrick, as I said, the interview is about you, not about me. And for many people, yours was the voice of the era, wasn't it? I mean, You were an announcer, presenter, newsreader on NTA, the only television network in Nigeria at the time, and you were also a presenter and DJ on FRC2, which was the only FM station at the time. And it was your voice, wasn't it, Patrick, that really clinched it for many people? I mean, you had, and you still have, that polished voice, which was British and Nigerian. And it is still a compelling voice. And whenever you were presenting, it was like you lit a fire in people's minds.
Well, the thing is, I enjoyed whatever it was I was doing. There was no two mind about it. We gave everything we got because we're just interested in the job. And then it was a bit curious because later on, everybody got like departmentalized or polarized. So when we started, there was no difference between you as a DJ or newscaster, as a presenter. You could do all. But later on, it was said that, if you were a presenter, you could not read the news. If you were a presenter, you could not do this or that. But we started doing everything because the training we got was you had to be versatile. You had to be able to read the news, present programs, be a continuity announcer, and so on. That's the training we got. And some of us took it, literally, and we tried to do the best we could. But now, I don't think that is so much so. People are used to, a certain aspect of the profession and just stick to that, But as you say, if what we did was successful, well, thank God for that. All I know is that we had a jolly good time. We had a jolly good time. And even sometimes you went to the US and you met some people. One time I went to the embassy in San Francisco to get some visa for Nigerian, some Americans who were coming over. And I was shocked that the entire embassy staff in San Francisco knew who I was. And what normally takes like 2 months to do, I did in 2 hours. So it was fun. Those days were fun, Charles. They were fun.
Absolutely.
And I just hope that... yes, yeah.
Well, let me ask you this then, Patrick. Sadly, we're coming to the end of this interview, but I hope you'll come back and talk to us some more some other time. But let me ask you this. I mean...
Talk. Yes.
Yeah, obviously that was a time, that was an era of great professionalism. I mean, you're a product of that era, and clearly you still sound very professional. How does that era compare with today in terms of the quality of broadcasting?
Well, now all the gadgets are there. Those days that we used to do a news story in like 10 hours. It used to take us like 6-7 hours of editing to get a story out. Now you can do it on the computer and, in time, no time at all, it's done. But the training was so professional. The other day, I stumbled across a news recording of Shola Omole reading the news in 1984. And I just couldn't tell whether it was 1984 or 2024. It was so professional. I mean, the editing, the reporting, the stands, the postures, everything was so professional. So it was so professional those days. You couldn't get away with just doing anything. And, there had to be some modicum of decorum in broadcasting. Broadcasting taught you decorum. There had to be decorum. It wasn't just anyhow. You couldn't just speak or talk anyhow you like. Like now, everybody just says anything they like, in anyhow they like. It's not that it's not good, but you see, there has to be some form of decorum in everything you do, because in broadcasting, you're not only entertaining, you're also teaching.
Well,
and a lot of the teaching has to do with with composure, with wholesomeness. There's things you're transmitting to the younger people.
Patrick.
So it was so professional then, Yes.
Patrick, I could talk to you forever. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We've got another program, Newsnight, coming up after this, but please come back and talk to us when we've got more time. Patrick O'Kay was one of the most respected broadcasters in this country, and he is, of course, talking to me there from our studios in Lagos. That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and Lagos and Kaduna. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.